Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Welcome to Accelerated Health with Sara Banta. I'm a wife, mom of 3, and an NANP certified supplement professional, but that's not all. I'm also the founder of the awarded Most Innovative Health Supplement Company. 4 years in a row, Accelerated Health Products, a brand offering innovative, natural, scalar-enhanced supplements to optimize your health. And this podcast, Accelerated Health with Sara Banta, was just named one of the top 10 supplement podcasts of 2025. So welcome. And today I'm so excited because we have a person who is looking at thyroid a little differently than the traditional way, not throwing medication at it and not necessarily throwing the typical supplements at it, and finding some different elements that your doctor's not uncovering. And that is Melissa Ramos. I'm so excited to have you on. She is the founder of the Thyroid Alchemy, a leading online platform transforming the way women heal from hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's, which I feel like everyone is suffering from now. She's a certified nutritionist with a background in Chinese medicine. And if you know me, you know I love Ayurvedic and Chinese medicine. And she brings both scientific insight and ancient healing wisdom with her work, alongside her sense of humor, which is so fun to watch. She makes it so not boring. So welcome, Melissa. How are you today?
That was a beautiful intro. Thank you. I'm really well, thanks. Thank you for having me on here. This is going to be an exciting little podcast to kind of dive into all things. I know that we have a collection of things that you want to chat about, so I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but I feel like everyone is suffering from suboptimal thyroid.
Yeah.
Whether it's within normal range or not, they're not feeling good. Their hair's falling out, their skin is creepy, they're having water retention, digestive issues, liver issues, which I want to get into. And all the symptoms point back to the thyroid. And most of my followers know that thyroid, liver, those are the two most important things to address first. And then we'll see what else kind of falls by the wayside. But you can't just throw medications at these organs. They might not take it. And what I have learned myself over the last year, I've gone through a parasitic infection, which destroyed me. My liver enzymes were through the roof. So what did my blood test show? Testosterone was in the tank. Thyroid numbers were in the tank. Cholesterol was up. Iron was up in my liver. So all of these things that you talk about, and it's this very delicate dance between them. And that's why I'm so excited to have you on. But before we get into all of that fun stuff, can you tell people about your story? Because that's why you're so passionate about this.
Yeah, so I guess in short, my story is that in the past, I have wrestled with digestive issues, chronic anemia for a really, really long time. And like most women, was told, here's just another iron supplement, it's going to fix it. And of course, I was just on this spiral of supplementation. I have had a history of ovarian cysts. I had an ovarian cyst that had ruptured and it tore off a piece of my right ovary. And they saved the ovary, but that whole thing caused me to bleed out. Close to about 2 liters of blood was removed. So that was pretty traumatic. That was back in 2010. And I found out that I had fibroids by accident. So ladies, anytime that you go to the doctor, please get copies of your results, because if I didn't get copies of my results, I never would have known that I had 3 fibroids. So that was definitely a piece to my story. And then in 2017, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune thyroid condition. And that really set me down this path of how did this happen? Because I guess it kind of feels like for a lot of women, it just happens. But, something like Hashimoto's takes close to a decade to form. And so I was on this roller coaster of depression, digestive issues that were relentless, where, I remember not being really able to eat very much. I felt like I had so many different food sensitivities. I was chasing a lot of symptoms like a lot of women. And I was also throwing a lot of supplements. And I do believe in supplements. We use them in practice, obviously. But I think that individuals have to also realize that they're there to supplement the overall plan. I always say to women, it makes up about a quarter to a third of your overall protocol. If your base foundation, which most people think that their foundation is like really strong, if that is just kind of shaky and it's cracked, you're not going to get the results that you want. So my background from a personal perspective really did vary hormonally, digestive, thyroid, and I think like a lot of women, I felt like everything is broken. I'm such a hot mess, right? Is the kind of the narrative we'll hear play over and over again, when you really just realize that they're all interconnected. And that's really what set me down this path of like, how do we get women the results that they deserve? What is missing? And that's where I was filling out the bigger picture so that women aren't just chasing symptoms. Because especially with the iron story, there's a lot of what I feel misinformation. I don't even know if it's misinformation as much as it's just a lack of understanding about the topic. I'm trying to give people the benefit of the doubt, but once we understand the role that copper plays, which has also been heavily demonized, that we start to see, oh, this is something that I actually need. And then how can I actually do some of the preventative steps that are, further worsening the entire story that's impacting everything. And so once we find that, everything begins to click. And that really was the case for me.
Yeah. And when you talk about the copper, unbound versus bound copper, I feel like it's the same conversation as when you clump in all the different types of estrogen, right? Yes. And estrogen dominance should not be called estrogen dominance. It should be called estrone dominance, or bad estrogen dominance. It's because that's like comparing apples to oranges. And so and for me and my one daughter, we've been anemic. I grew up anemic. She grew up anemic. I didn't know anything. I was throwing iron supplements at her, and imagine that her iron stores didn't get any better. It wasn't improving her energy or anything. And then come to find out the role that copper plays in that. But can you dive into where Western medicine is getting thyroid health wrong? Because I feel like they're focused over here and they're not focused underneath at the root cause, where, once you heal the root cause, then the other stuff kind of takes care of itself.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot that's being missed with thyroid care, unfortunately. The first part is the testing is incomplete. Doctors are only testing thyroid stimulating hormone, which isn't even a thyroid hormone, it's a thyroid stimulating hormone. That's number one. Sometimes they test T4, but T4 is your inactive thyroid hormone. And for a vast majority of women, if there's a conversion issue where T4, which is your inactive thyroid hormone, isn't converting into T3, your active thyroid hormone. So it's really important to get those T3 levels tested. And because 97% of women who have hypothyroidism have an autoimmune condition like Hashimoto's or even Graves', testing your thyroid antibodies is really vital. So the testing piece is lacking substantially. The other thing is that there's a very much of a watch and wait approach. We'll just monitor it. We'll see how it goes. We'll throw some medications at the overall mix. And it's like, well, this isn't what we should be looking at. We should be looking at, well, why is the thyroid out of whack? And unfortunately, especially with, I feel allopathic medicine, it's a very, and honestly, like even some alternative natural medical practitioners practice this way as well, where it's the very dartboard approach. Like it's this one marker. We need to look at patterns. So when we see thyroid care, what's affecting it? And that's where I think a more comprehensive understanding of blood work is super important, because it's like, oh, well, this is high or this is low, but how does it all play together as a cohesive mix? Because the body isn't just, these segregated parts. It's an overall symphony. So I feel that that's a big part, is we're not looking, we're just trying to manage symptoms, I think, in allopathic medicine, versus see this as what actually are the layers to this. And I feel even in the natural medical community, we're telling people to look at what's the root cause. And I think that is misleading people, because when we tell people what's the root cause, people who don't understand the medicine or how the body works, they are searching for the one thing that led to it all to fall apart. And that's simply not how it works. It's like a marriage that falls apart, even if there's adultery, which I know is might be triggering for some people. One thing does not lead to the demise of a marriage, just like one thing does not lead to your whole body, like all these things happening. There's layers to it. And I think the other aspect of where we really fail women is feeling like, if you look at all the studies, a lot of them are conducted on men. And that goes for medication. And we work very, very differently. We are cyclical beings. And I think that's important in the overall context of this, that I think is vital to understand the entirety of the picture. And also it's like, well, nutrition isn't even thought of as a very important piece to this overall equation. What you eat is vital. So yes, supplements are important. I also feel a lot of women come to us and they're like, how do I lower my thyroid antibodies? That's a pretty big thing. And I caution women on this, because when we are fixated on, I have to lower this number, we're missing an overall piece, because some people who might have antibodies at 500 might actually be thriving better than somebody who has antibodies at 100. You need a healthy immune system to even produce antibodies in the first place. So chasing antibodies, I think, is often where we fail women. I think a lot of women see even medications as a failure. I can't get on medications because that's the worst thing that can happen. I'm not saying medications are the be and end all, but depending on how much destruction has happened to the thyroid, some people actually need that support while we work the underlying factors to the equation. So it's just such a multifaceted issue with thyroid care that I think that women are we're failing women again and again. Antidepressants, here you go. Just slap it on because you have depression. Or, oh, you need to lose weight, so just eat less and exercise more. I think that there's a lot being missed, where women are either gaslit, they're dismissed, or they're devalued. And it's just, we're not seeing it as an overall context. And then the last thing, and this isn't just even from allopathic care, I think it's even in our industry, we have an obsession in the Western culture of healing. I have to heal, I have to heal, I have to heal. And I don't actually believe women need to heal. And I know a lot of people are going to go, oh, but I feel terrible. I have to heal. Of course I have to heal. I'm not denouncing the efforts you take in this journey. I'm questioning your intentions behind your actions. If your intentions are, I am in this cementing this subconscious belief that I am broken, you are going to be chasing that healing spiral, and you are going to be chasing your enoughness. And I think that is so toxic that we start to fear every little tiny thing and end up going into this orthorexic type of place. And it's unhealthy. So I honestly believe it's a journey where there's transformation and there are layers to it. But so many women that I see are, but I have to heal. And I'm like, this is worse for you than the overall context of what you're doing is that you feel that you're broken, and you can't build anything from a cracked foundation.
There's so many things that I want to touch on that. I love what you're saying. And I'll start with the last first because I remember it most. The healing part. What you tell your brain is going to affect your physical body. If I'm looking in the mirror and saying, oh my God, my hair's falling out, guess what? It's going to really fall out even more. Or I am a person with Hashimoto's. That's my identity.
Yes.
I have a sluggish thyroid. Therefore, I need to go order the chicken salad with the dressing on the side. And I need to eat less calories than the person next to me. And I need to go run an extra 10 miles. And poor me, I'm just succumbing to the fact that I'm going to have an extra 50 pounds on me because I have a sluggish thyroid.
Yeah.
And that goes for any diagnosis, not just thyroid issues. The one thing I wanted to touch on with all of these multifaceted things that go into thyroid health, I think the problem is it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
People want a magic pill. I always laugh at the fact that my dad is totally Western medicine. He has neuropathy, and I will tell him he should do this treatment. He should do that treatment. This will help. This supplement might help. Might maybe go to a new doctor. He will only go to the one doctor at Stanford University because it is the best doctor in the United States. And that doctor literally tells him there's no cure for your neuropathy. So he is sitting back doing nothing except for waiting for the one magic pill that is probably not going to come in his lifetime. Because if you tell me, well, it's because of heavy metals and it's your liver and it's a lack of copper and it's some of the foods that you're eating that are causing your thyroid to be sluggish and it's the stress and it's the fibroids and you're overexercising, the person gets overwhelmed and says, I can't do any of it. I'm going to go back to my victim mentality of I am a person with hypothyroidism. Yeah. And this is what it is. Yeah. And so I feel like what I try to do is to lay it out and say, okay, let's just take a couple steps that you can tolerate. Some people want to jump all in. Some people can only take 1 or 2 steps at a time and to meet that person where their tolerance is. But what you described with the thyroid panel is exactly me. When my liver was under attack, and I had a parasite infection that also incorporated some shingles. And this is all spike protein related.
Yeah.
When I had all of that going on, my TSH was low, showing a traditional hyper state. My T4 was high, hyperthyroid. My T3 was in the tank. My reverse T3 was high, hypo. So who are you getting your diagnosis from? Because one doctor told me I was hyper and the other doctor told me I was hypo.
Yeah.
My body was in an adaptive response state to what it was dealing with.
Yeah.
Right? So that part of it is just transitory. And if your immune system is under attack or you're going through a stressful time in your period, you want your body to adapt. Yeah. That's its job. And I love how you said it's how you feel. If someone's thriving, even though their antibodies are high versus someone that's low, maybe the cell receptor sites are more sensitive in this person versus this person. And a blood test doesn't tell you everything. It's just one piece to the puzzle to clue you in. So with all of that said, that's why I love the work you're doing, because it asks the questions that no one's asking.
Yeah.
And it puts the pieces together. So let's get into liver, because then I feel like the liver, then we can talk about iron and copper. So how does your liver health affect your thyroid health?
In a lot of ways. So the liver is where 60% of your thyroid hormone conversion occurs. So anytime that I see somebody who has an out of whack thyroid panel, right away, I'm like, probably got some liver stress. So then I'm looking at other things. And, yes, I'm looking at blood, but to be clear to everyone, blood is where the last place where your issues show up. So you're going to be symptomatic before it even registers on blood work, which is the reason why I just love what you had said, because your body's going to have this adaptive response. And sometimes we have to trust that also that the body is trying to do what it is. It's not that your body's against you. It's trying to adapt. So I love that part of what you had said. But the liver is so crucial for thyroid hormone conversion. And the liver is, the partner organ to the gallbladder, right? And The gallbladder, the liver is where bile, which is that yellow fluid, for context for those listening, where bile is what helps to carry out, it's like the body's trash can. It carries out excess hormones, toxins. It helps to assimilate fat, even a little bit of protein. And so we need, bile to be flowing smoothly. And it flows and it actually stores in the gallbladder, and then it comes out of the gallbladder. And then a lot of women have had their gallbladders removed. Mm-hmm. And that normally I'll see that post-pregnancy. I will see that in around perimenopause. And that's often because progesterone levels drop. And if we have progesterone levels that drop quite a bit, then that's going to slow gallbladder emptying time. Mm. And so if bile isn't moving properly, that's going to affect your thyroid, because a lot of those toxins and those hormones get recirculated. So that whole system really does play a massive role. And now a lot of women who have hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's, are like, you have low stomach acid. This is, the root cause for why you're having all these thyroid issues. No, low stomach acid is a symptom. It's ridiculous to think that it's the root cause. You look at bile, think of bile as yin, right, from a Chinese medical perspective, which is my background. And then you have stomach acid, which would be the yang, or a lot of people say yang, but it's yang. So yin and yang. So you have stomach acid is the yang, bile is the yin. Well, if you have low stomach acid symptoms, you're getting bloated half an hour after eating, you're struggling digesting protein because you need stomach acid to digest protein, there's a very good chance you probably have sluggish, muddy, thick bile. Mm. They work together. And so anytime that I see low stomach acid, I'm like, let's look at the functions of the liver and the gallbladder, right? Because that's going to end up triggering this now indirect issue of low stomach acid, which then affects the thyroid. Because the thyroid needs, these healthy minerals like magnesium and iron and zinc and macronutrients like protein to be able to thrive, but it can't do that in the presence of low stomach acid, which is an indirect issue of sluggish bile. Mm-hmm. So the liver plays a massive role. And, like yourself who had grappled with parasites, a lot of people are under a false impression that parasites are just coming from their digestive tract, their colon. Parasites can hide virtually anywhere in the human body. They can hide in mucous membranes. They can hide in the liver and the gallbladder. They love to hide out in the bile ducts. So often when there are liver issues, I'd like to be able to look at what are their liver enzymes looking like. Maybe their sluggish bile is also because it's pathogenic related. And so I feel for women who have hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's, because like you said at the top of this podcast, it's just so overwhelming for so many women. And you're right, because they hear, it's my liver, it's my gallbladder, it's parasites, it's this, it's heavy metal toxicity, it's H. pylori. Holy heck, where do I start? And that's where I feel in my clinical experience, and I've been at this for almost 20 years, is I really believe that there's an order to healing. And when we focus and we dartboard approach certain things like H. pylori or this and that, we miss how this is supposed to go. And we kind of go right back into other places, spending more time, energy, and money. And all three of those things are your currency. So the liver plays a massive role in hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's. And to be completely honest with you, from all the women that we have worked with in clinic, the majority of them have such massive nervous system dysregulation, and the majority of them have no idea. They know they're stressed, but they don't know that these reactions that they have, they come in hot, they are frustrated, they're angry, all these liver pathology type emotions. They're depressed, which is anger turned inwards. These types of states, I don't care what supplement you throw at it.
Right.
If you are not consciously working on your nervous system, not just throwing supplements to lower cortisol or, elevate cortisol, which by the way is an adaptive response.
Right.
Your gallbladder is going to struggle to empty. There's a sphincter of Odie, which sounds like a dog from the Peanuts characters. It is a sphincter that opens or closes. And when you're really stressed, the body goes, I don't want to open it. So then bile can't flow through. So here is this individual doing coffee enemas, and they're doing the supplements, etc., and their liver and their gallbladder is still struggling, and their thyroid is still struggling. When meanwhile, the foundation is not necessarily solid, you know? And I think that we're under a false impression that your nervous system always has to be regulated. That is not the case. We're all of us. I don't care how evolved you think someone is, unless they are a Buddha or God, you are going to be triggered till the day you die. The difference is that you are trying, the goal with nervous system work is to get yourself to a place of how quickly do you bounce back? How quickly can you go, I'm going to get out of my head because I need to get into my body, right? The soul leaves the heart to go to the mind often. And the idea is just to go back into the body and go, okay, where do I feel this? I'm super triggered because my mother-in-law said something super triggering, or the IRS, or in Canada, the CRA, you sent me this mail and now I owe $10,000 and I'm super dysregulated, right? Like, it's, where do I feel this in my body? Hold on, let me stop looping back into the story. Because if the more that we can catch ourselves and build a level of resilience and capacity, organs like the liver and gallbladder begin to thrive. And I think that that's really important. Otherwise, the thyroid is just an alarm bell. That's it. It's just ding, 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 ding. All these other things are happening, but it's as a indirect response to other things that are happening in the system.
Yeah. You mentioned progesterone, and I didn't realize, so low progesterone will trigger a sluggish gallbladder.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is very interesting because my daughter had low progesterone, which I think is another epidemic, right, among women right now. And so many of her young friends are being put on birth control for that. Well, she was really nauseous at the time. Imagine that, because nausea comes from the liver and the gallbladder.
Yeah.
And the doctor wanted to put her on progesterone. Her appetite that was 0 went to -10 on day 1 and 2 of progesterone. And I go, okay, stop this. What's going on? We saw another practitioner, and that practitioner said, no, her liver is so backed up, it can't even process the progesterone because it's fat-based. Hormones are fat-based. The liver and the gallbladder can't deal with it. So it's just adding to that pile of things that the liver has to deal with, instead of actually being assimilated and helping her feel better. And you could look at the girl in her eyes. She just went from not even being able to drink pineapple juice or any juice to get calories in, to nothing, to not even being able to drink water. And as a mom, of course, you can imagine it was very scary. So that girl's doing great now. We used no hormones. We kind of went from the ground up and gave her that foundation, and she's thriving. So with that liver health, and I talk about this so often, and people don't want to hear it because they're like, my liver, what? And I love the fact that you bring up the emotional part. Yeah. And that it stores anger and frustration, and you're hot. You know, your liver's hot. And in Chinese and Ayurvedic medicine, they talk a lot about hot or cool. Those are some things that you can feel in your body. But another symptom of mine was the iron stores and the cholesterol were high. And so can you talk about those two things as it relates to liver and thyroid and hypothyroidism?
I would love to, because it's one of my favorite topics. Okay, so iron is a very misunderstood part. And so for iron to be assimilated, we need copper. And I think that's where we have to start. So we need bioavailable copper. And the problem with now, we have women who are just being given iron constantly, and there's no focus on the circulation of iron. We can't just add iron to the system without understanding that we have to circulate it. The majority of cases are not actually a true deficiency. I don't care if someone says, oh, no, but my ferritin's in the single digits. Oh, no, but my iron levels are low. Unless you have like internal bleeding, untreated celiac, you likely don't have a deficiency. You have a dysfunction. We have to circulate iron. For iron to get circulated, you need bioavailable copper. Okay. And what happens is when we don't have that, iron can actually store 10 times higher in the organs and tissues than in the blood. If it was in the blood, it would register on your blood work and you'd be like, you're not anemic. Great, awesome. But that's not what's happening. When iron stores in the organs and tissues, one of the primary areas it gets stored is the liver. And it can store in other areas. It can store in the intestinal lining, which becomes food for things like parasites and bacterial and infections and candida, etc. But it can store in the liver. And what happens is it oxidizes. And that is essentially, kind of think of it as like it starts to rust. You don't want your organs and tissues to rust. It can also store in the uterus. So when women have really heavy bleeding, believe it or not, it's a protective mechanism of the body to be able to expel this unbound iron because it's toxic to the system when it's not in the place where it should be. So what ends up happening is we need that bioavailable copper. So we think of copper comes in, and what ends up happening is we essentially need a taxi cab for iron to go in the taxi cab. So it can shuttle in and out of the blood, in and out of the cells and into the blood where it belongs. For that taxi cab to come, we need healthy adrenals. So the adrenals are the ones who call the Uber driver or the taxi cab, right? Okay, we got to get the taxi. And then the liver produces this taxi cab, which is called ceruloplasmin. It's a protein, not that you get from food. Your liver has to produce it, but your liver can't produce it if you're super stressed out, hence the stress in the nervous system piece. But for ceruloplasmin to even be produced by the liver, you need bioavailable copper. And most women and men are actually quite deficient in copper. They have a lot of biounavailable copper from like unfiltered drinking water or the birth control pill, biounavailable copper. But bioavailable copper is vital. So now we have ceruloplasmin that is produced. And when ceruloplasmin is produced, this is this taxi cab. So the taxi cab rolls up and it's like, okay, we're here, hop on in. Okay, the iron goes, it walks up to the taxi cab and it tries to open the door. Shit, it's locked. We can't open this. So what do we need? Well, we need various nutrients like vitamin A. Vitamin A is the one that gets demonized a lot because, oh my God, it's vitamin A toxicity. Those studies were done on synthetic forms of vitamin A. So we need vitamin A in the form of retinol, which we would get from things like cod liver oil. Okay. And the funny thing is if you look at women with hypothyroid Hashimoto's symptoms, they're often told they have a vitamin D deficiency. So what do? They take shit tons of vitamin D. Problem with the vitamin D that they're actually consuming is that eventually that will offset vitamin A status. And a lot of women who have hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's are vitamin A deficient. But we need vitamin A to unlock that cab door. Then we have to open up the cab door. It's one thing to unlock it, but you got to open it. So now we got to open up the cab door. Well, we need whole food vitamin C, not ascorbic acid, not from liposomal vitamin C, whole food vitamin C. Your body is always going to recognize things in a whole food form, better than synthetic isolated supplements. So in that whole process, now iron can get into the taxi cab and it can do its job and go in and out of the cells and into the blood and work its magic, right? And copper is so crucial for women, but we are taught to fear it because of it's copper toxicity. Yeah. And so a lot of people are scared of it. But the issue is that when we don't have enough bioavailable copper, when copper is low, the body will struggle to convert cholesterol into hormones and bile. So cholesterol starts to build up. And not because your body is broken, like a lot of women think, but because it can't use it properly. It's having a bunch of ingredients and no chef. So copper is a massive antioxidant. So if it's low, cholesterol is more likely to oxidize. Remember, oxidizing is like it's rusting, okay? And that's not healthy, which is actually makes it super dangerous. And that's the part that contributes to inflammation, into plaque. So instead of trying to lower cholesterol, the deeper focus is on getting minerals like copper, magnesium, and vitamin A back into balance. And so we hear a lot about magnesium is so important, and it is. It's important for the circulation of iron. If we don't have enough magnesium and vitamin C, the cab is never going to show up because the adrenals are going to be just exhausted, but only 20% of your magnesium, oral magnesium from supplements, is being absorbed. I still supplement with magnesium. I think it's wonderful. But I'm also doing Epsom salt baths, whether it's a full body bath or even a foot soak if you don't have a bathtub, because we need that dermal support as well. And then that way the body can actually do what it's been trying to do all along.
Yes. Okay, so you're telling me it doesn't matter how much cholesterol I eat to translate on that blood test, or what happens when I take the statin drug to lower my cholesterol?
So a very small amount of cholesterol is produced from what you're actually eating. Right. Cholesterol, there's a lot more to the entire panel. And when we look at cholesterol, people go, oh, LDL is the bad one and HDL is the good one. But LDL, it matters on the size of the particles, right? So if you were to get into a car accident, knock on wood, or, surgery or what have you, your LDL particles, the fluffy, big, buoyant ones, are going to increase as a protective mechanism, right? So when we see high LDL levels, I'm also looking at someone's stress levels as well. When we're taking statin medications, yes, it's going to lower cholesterol, but that's also going to affect you neurologically. Like, believe it or not, the American Heart Association is now recommending statins to children as young as 12 years old.
It's crazy.
Like, these are massive neurological issues that are going to occur in these children. And it's like, it's such a short-sighted view. It's not about getting rid of the butter and getting rid of the eggs. Like, we need this. We need cholesterol. Cholesterol we need it for every single cell, for our brain. We wouldn't even have hormones if we didn't have cholesterol. It is vital. It's just a matter of, when we're looking at the cholesterol picture, copper is vital because it circulates iron. And if we're not circulating iron, in short, it's going to lead to a massive inflammatory response, which is going to trigger cholesterol, because it's going to go, oh no, there's a problem here, mayday, right? Yeah. So that's a big piece of it.
Yeah, and I feel like all of these pieces are affecting more people than ever before. We know the spike protein accelerates copper depletion, and so does processed foods. And 70% of the American diet is processed food. And the studies keep coming out and coming out and coming out on why they are the leading cause of all of these diseases in children getting younger and younger and younger. We are almost out of time, which I can't believe, but I want to touch on that connection between thyroid health and parasites. And we touched on it a little bit with my own personal story. But parasites, I feel like they're the king of the kingdom over the viruses, the bacteria, and everything else that's going on. And if you think you are in control of your thoughts, think again. Those parasites are controlling you. And I had to learn how to manage my nervous system as a mom and a wife and a business owner, and pretend that I was just okay, even though those parasites had overtaken my body. And I've never gone through something so difficult in my life. Yeah. And I felt like the wheels were coming off. And then what I learned is that those parasites swallow heavy metals. So when you start killing them off, you get all of these toxins that are released, and then you have all the detox flu symptoms. And I'm the queen of detoxing. I love detoxing and doing it all the right ways. And I did, but I still suffered because they're holding on to these toxins, and then when you piss them off, they're all released, and then that can only suppress your thyroid function. So can you talk about that connection between thyroid and parasites?
Would love to. So parasites, you touched upon a really good point. Parasites sequester up to 8 times their body weight in toxicity. So this is why when we have women who come to us and say, I have SIBO, I have H. pylori, I have candida, and I went to a heavy metal detox, and they're doing all these other things. I'm like, if you haven't actually addressed the parasites prior, you're going to spend so much money and time and energy, because there's a thing that's sequestering even more of it. And it's not to say start out with parasites, because there's things to do prior to that. You have to obviously implement drainage, because if you don't, it's like trying to kick out a drunk guy from the bar with the doors locked. It doesn't work, right? Like, that's important. But parasites are such an important part of this mix. However, Parasites, this is where the germ theory comes into play.
Mm-hmm.
It is not just about the germ. Parasites thrive off a weak host. So if your body is, and it could be the healthiest person in the entire world, there can be some level of shakiness in that host that parasite's like, I'm going to thrive in this. Otherwise, the body is going to be strong enough to fight this. The word parasite is not synonymous with the word pathogen. Everybody has a parasite, but is it pathogenic is a totally different scenario, right? Like if I remember I went to Southeast Asia for my honeymoon, right? And I got sick, like a lot of people, Bali belly.
Mm-hmm.
But my body is under a form of stress because traveling is stressful, right? New food, new water, new time zone difference. That's going to lead me to becoming a bit of a hospitable host for infection. I'm not all of a sudden the Ritz-Carlton for these guys to thrive. So the terrain is extremely important. But yes, they can absolutely gobble up on neurotransmitters, hence how they can affect how you think, feel, and believe. They can affect what the foods that you crave. They can absolutely raise liver enzymes. So, a lot in your case where you had a lot of liver issues that were happening, they certainly can raise antibodies. And another thing that I want to keep people aware of is that if you are doing a parasite cleanse and then all of a sudden you go and you get your blood work done and you're like, oh my gosh, my labs look worse. That's very possible. Take a breath. Your body is adapting. Like the amazing thing that you said off the top of this podcast, which I think was so smart to be able to open it up the way that you did, is our bodies do adaptive work. So sometimes when you get blood work after you're done a detox, it could look worse before it gets better. It's no different than you have low iron. That parasite could be gobbling up your iron because it's food, because unbound iron can actually store in the intestinal cells, creating food, right? So it's so important to see this as the overall, eagle-eye view of the entirety of the situation. Otherwise, we're just doing nothing but chasing symptoms. But parasites play a huge role in all of it. It's just a matter of seeing it as, yes, this is a huge piece to this picture. We do a ton of detoxification work for women. But the amount of people who come to me go, can I just take ivermectin and it'll fix it? And I'm like, well, it depends on what type of parasite you have. Right. If you have strongyloides, sure, it'll be really great, but it might not be great for flukes. What about black walnut hull? It's not about one supplement that's going to fix it. You don't need another supplement. Like you don't just need more iron. You don't just need more copper. You don't just need more black walnut hull or ivermectin. It's a strategy. And without a proper strategy and the support, this is where people fall off and go, this natural stuff didn't work. To know what you were doing, right? Because it does work. It's just a matter of understanding it from the overall picture.
Oh my gosh, so many good nuggets today. I could talk to you forever.
How did the time go by so darn fast?
I don't know. It's because we're talking about things that no one's talking about. Your top takeaway for the listener, because let's bring it back in. What is the first thing to do that you can do to really grab hold of your thyroid health? Because that's why they're listening, right?
Yeah. I think somebody's going to listen to this podcast and they are going to feel probably pretty overwhelmed by the info. They might even feel pretty empowered and go, oh, there's a lot of info I didn't know. But the thing I would say is please start with the foundations. Please start with, how much protein are you actually eating? How much movement are you getting? You have to balance your blood sugar, right? Really focus in on the foundations. We call them the basics, but there's nothing basic about it. Yeah. Because if you just skip to, the parasite protocol, or if you skip to this and that, it's not really going to be effective for you. So my biggest thing is, really focus on adequate protein, get lots of sunshine, get grounded, get away from those screens if possible, double down on your sleep, and ask yourself when you're triggered, like, where do I feel this in my body? And allow yourself to feel through it. When you're crying, it's just essentially cortisol in liquid form. And I think that when we really focus in on those foundations, you can start to layer things like beef liver supplement, phenomenal idea for copper, right? Cod liver oil, amazing. you can start to add in some of those things, but understand that supplements are just a quarter of your protocol. There's so much you can do that will end up making those supplements work so much better, because now you've created the proper foundation that have laid out a map and a roadmap for those supplements to really work. And that's what I want for people. Otherwise, they do the supplements and they're like, this didn't work. It's because the foundations were not really set.
Right. I mean, it's like someone saying, Sarah, I intermittent fast, I focus on a low carb diet, I work out, and oh yeah, I have 3 to 4 glasses of wine at night. Or, right. Or I'm sleeping only 4 hours. If you're not sleeping, forget everything else we're talking about. Get your sleeping under control and then take the next step. You've got to do the basics. And I am 1,000% with you as far as supplements go. They are supplemental. And a lot of supplements are filled with fillers and bacteria and mold that could be triggering an even bigger immune response. And there's a lot of junk out there. After the pandemic, everyone is reaching for cheaper ingredients from cheaper sources. And we've got tariffs now to have to wiggle around to get our ingredients. And hey, as a company, I am having to source differently, but we are still very stringent on where we're getting it from, because we're not going to let the quality go down. But I'm just saying that pressure on these supplement companies is there. So you have to be careful. And I eat ancestral blend meats, venison and bison, to get my good organ meats in there, and trying to get it all in whole food form as much as I can. So that's where the foundation is. I love that you stress that. So Melissa, tell people where they can work with you and find you.
So you can check me out on my website, Thyroid Alchemy, and all the info in terms of what we offer is there. I would highly recommend checking me out on Instagram. It's where I am the most active, and it's just Thyroid Alchemy, and you'll see that I'm very active there, very responsive over direct messages. You can shoot me a message, and I can be able to share a little bit more about how we can help. We have a full service clinic available. So even if you, for example, have blood work and you're like, I need a set of eyes just to take a look at existing work that I've had done, whether it's blood work or hair trace mineral analysis or a hormone test or anything like that, my team is trained to look at all of that and really help you assess what to do next. And that's on top of like all the offerings that we have that really do suit a variety of different, financial brackets of where you are. We're there to support you and meet you at that place that you're at.
I love it. I mean, I love that you are offering a different angle and with humor. You're so funny to watch. I mean, so entertaining, which always makes these topics a lot easier to digest and very easily to understand, because there are some practitioners out there that they're talking to you and you're like, I'm glazing over because I have no idea what you just said. So if I don't connect with what you're talking about, I'm not going to do what you say, because I don't believe it, right? So thank you for all the work you're doing. And I'd love to have you back, because we are so aligned, and I feel like we could continue this for a couple more hours. So
I know, it felt like it went by in 5 minutes, and I'm like, how did that happen? We could be talking for several more hours. There's so much more to talk about.
I know. Well, thanks, Melissa, for joining us. And we will definitely have you back on.
All right. Chat soon.
Wow, I don't know about you guys, but my mind is blown. All of these pieces are coming together. And it's not just about throwing a thyroid medication on the thyroid. So what else can you do? Like Melissa was talking about, sleep, food, move the body, sunlight, stress. I know that stress one is like roll your eyes, because how are you going to lower it? What do? I walk my dogs morning and night at dawn and dusk. I meditate, I journal. I'll just close my eyes and really envision what I want my day to be like and only focus on the positive. Those are some things that I do. I use my Aura Ring to tell me if I'm in a stress state. I also use my Iodine. That is my number one supplement for thyroid health, but it's not just for the thyroid. It does helps produce the thyroid hormones T3 and T4. 3 and 4 stand for molecules of iodine. It helps boost the metabolism, your energy, your mood. Iodine deficiency is the number one cause for depression. It's also known to help with children's IQ and your IQ. That's why we're getting fluoride out of the water. What's so ironic, did you know most antidepressants are fluoro-based, meaning fluoride is in there? So as you're trying to improve your mood with the antidepressant, the fluoride is dumbing you down and displacing the iodine that is needed for that mood enhancement and clarity. So just something to think about. Iodine is antiviral, antiparasitic, antibacterial, antipathogenic. It's a strong antioxidant. But the difference is accelerating iodine is the only iodine that is made from monoatomic iodine deep from the earth's underneath the earth in South America. Why is that important? Most iodine supplements are coming from the Asias. So if you are having an allergic reaction to an iodine supplement, it might be the toxicity of where it's coming from, because the Asian iodine sources have been contaminated by Fukushima and the chemicals and the toxins in the ocean water. So accelerating the iodine is free of radiation and toxins. It's coming from a place that has been untouched by modern man. The carrier is 200 proof organic, non-GMO alcohol. Why is that important? If it's any less than 200 proof, that means that it makes the composition of the liquid of the iodine thicker. So it's harder to get into the cells. Well, iodine is needed for that cell membrane health. You have an iodolipid value of the cell membrane to get the toxins out and the nutrients in. And you also need that iodine to increase that cellular energy, increase that ATP. You also need iodine outside the cell to clean the blood so the liver can do its job. And we talked about the importance of the liver. It helps balance your progesterone to estrogen ratios and all of your hormones, so many things. But then you can pair it with the accelerated scalar copper. Why did I come out with a copper supplement? For all the reasons that you listened to today. I was anemic. I thought it was an iron issue. My daughter was anemic. I thought it was an iron issue. It wasn't. We needed copper to open the door to let the iron we already had in our bodies to get to where it needed to go. And most people are copper deficient today because of the spike protein and processed foods, two things that accelerate the copper depletion out of your body. Copper is needed for regulating that iron metabolism. It prevents the hidden iron overload that suppresses thyroid and feeds that inflammation. It supports T4 and T3 conversion, reduces oxidative stress, supports mitochondrial function, and then, of course, it's enhanced with scalar frequencies to reach the highest bioavailability than any other copper supplement. You get what you pay for, unfortunately. So those are my two basic supplements. But like I said, and like Melissa said, they are supplements to a strong whole food diet, sleep, exercise, movement, stress, lifestyle. And yes, today could have been really complicated and overwhelming. Go over it again, take some notes, reach out to me, let me know where you are stuck, where your questions are, and I'm happy to help. And if you want to go further than just those two supplements, she mentioned proteins. You got to get your proteins in, and most people are not getting enough in. You can add in the accelerated aminos. One serving is the equivalent of 30 grams of protein. It helps with muscles, tissues, enzymes, energy, ATP. It also prevents that muscle breakdown that most people get. So that's another idea. So hopefully this was helpful. Thanks for listening. And our discussion does not have to stop here. If you're feeling lost, just email me through the website. Get your free supplement protocol on the website, sarabantahealth.com. Follow me on social media at Accelerated Health Products. Join the free group coaching on Telegram. I'm happy to answer your questions. I post insights every single day. You can find this podcast look up Accelerated Health with Sara Banta, and we are on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, E360, iHeartRadio, Amazon, Roku, over 100 different platforms. Share this with your friends. How many of your friends are complaining they're fatigued, they can't lose the weight? It's all thyroid related, and their doctor just is testing their TSH. They need to hear this. You can use coupon podcast10 to get 10% off site-wide. And remember, I'm live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So join me next time for more ways to unlock your health potential.